Okay, I'll call to order the meeting of the City Council for the City of Beaumont on Thursday, August 25th for the special meeting, and we'll call to order at 5:06. Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Lara?
Here.
Councilmember Santos?
Here.
Councilmember Fenn?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Here.
Mayor White?
Here. And public comments, you said we do not have any, or do you have any written public comments?
I do have, let's see, not for items not on the agenda, and we have
Okay.
no callers on the line.
Okay. So we'll move to item 1, City Clerk Certificate of Facts pursuant to Election Code Section 10229.
Good evening, council. Before you tonight is a certificate of facts in regards to the current election. The nomination period began on July 18th and was extended until August 17th. The treasurer's seat had one candidate, and there were no candidates for city clerk. So this in turn calls forth the process of Election Code Section 10229. And with that, it gives you 3 options to proceed with the election process. So pursuant to this section, there are 3 courses of action that may be taken, 1 action per each seat. So there will need to be an action and a motion for each seat. So in the case that you have 1 candidate for treasurer, AJ Patel, and he is on Zoom to be able to comment if needed. And council has the option to appoint the person who was nominated, which would be Mr. Patel, or to hold the election and allow his name to be on the ballot, which in turn would make him the elected treasurer. For the seat of city clerk, because there were no nominated candidates, council has the option to appoint an eligible voter or to hold the election and allow for a write-in candidate option to be part of the election. With that, I'll let council discuss. There is a written statement submitted by someone who would like to be considered for city clerk. We also have a gentleman in the audience that has expressed the same. And let me see if we have anybody else on Zoom.
I don't know if she told you, but Elaine Morgan is going to be she should be here any minute.
Okay, all right, and that was the third that I knew of.
Okay.
I'll let council discuss, and if you have any questions, we also have John Pinckney on Zoom also that can answer any questions.
So yeah, I have a question, couple questions. Regarding the city clerk, let's start there. Originally you said we had 3 options for each seat, but on the city clerk, you said we had either the option of appointing a voter or allowing it to go to a write-in. That's not a special election if we allow it to go to a write-in? It
is not a special election. It would be the current election that would continue.
Okay, so that we wouldn't be paying for a separate election
Not
completely.
at this point, no.
And a write-in could win with 2 votes if no one else got more than 2?
I believe that's how I believe it's by highest number of votes. I do want to confirm that with the register of voters to make sure I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I haven't gotten confirmation back from them yet, but I believe it is the highest number of votes.
Okay, and then on the treasurer seat, since we do have a qualified candidate, does that candidate have a say in whether or not it's appointed or elected?
He can surely request what he would like. He submitted an email to me saying that he would like to present. I was going to let him do it
Okay.
in person since he's here on Zoom to present his request.
Okay. So let's have any more questions? that we can talk about before we actually start looking at the specific seats? Sure, go ahead, Mr. Martin.
So Nicole, you mentioned that if, in the case of the treasurer for AJ Patel, if we were to go ahead and just nominate and approve, then the title changes from elected to appointed. Is that correct?
Correct. From what I can gather, this would determine that he would be an appointed treasurer.
Okay, but still following the same term?
Correct. He would still fill the full 4 term as if elected.
Okay, all right, that's all, Mayor, thank you.
Mr. Finn?
So I want to make sure I understood that correctly. So if we appoint him, typically, doesn't a candidate have to run at the very next election, if they're appointed by a council?
That only applies if there is a vacancy midterm or if there is a appointment made after the election. So post-election, if there's still a vacancy, then if council appointed at that point,
Okay.
then
So,
I bel-
so if it were December and we did it, then they run in 2024.
yes, then it
If we
would
do
fall
it prior
under,
to the election, then that is then appointed for the full 4-year term,
it would
correct?
fall under a different section. So it would no longer fall under this elections code. It would be a different government code section. And I believe you're correct. I'll have to look at
Okay.
it to double check.
So I wouldn't want to put the person in a position where they have to turn around and run and file again in 2 years,
Sure.
is the reason for the question.
Okay.
It's my understanding if that happened, appointing after for 2 years, 2024 election, that person would only run for 2 years. Yeah.
And I thought, I'm sorry, jump in
okay.
here real
Go
quick. I
ahead.
thought when we first talked about this, was that if we decided not to appoint a city clerk position, that we could appoint after the election. But I didn't know that are we required to go to a write-in at the, write-in election at that point?
If you decide not to fill the seat by appointment this evening,
Yes.
and then it runs through the normal election process, if there are no write-in candidates, then at that point, it would be a vacant seat, and then it would fall under a different government code that Mr. Fenn was referring to. At that appointment, it would be you would have 60 days
Okay.
to appoint someone, or you have to hold a special election if no one is appointed by those 60 days.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Locke.
So I'm clear, appointment this evening for Mr. Patel would be a 4-year term. Anything after the election is a 2-year term?
Yes.
Any appointment after, okay. And then if we appoint and we don't have to do the election for the one individual candidate, is there a cost savings with the register of voters, or?
So I checked with the Register of Voters, and there is no definitive answer. It's all kind of what-if scenarios. So we get charged based on the ballot printing. So if not putting treasurer or city clerk on the ballot, and we were at, if we were at 2 pages and not putting those names, it bumped us down to just 1 page, then there would be a cost savings because we would be a 1-page ballot election that we would be paying for. However, if we're only on 1 page and not putting those names keeps us on a 1-page ballot, there's no savings. And they weren't able to confirm where we're at as far as the ballot goes.
So the register of voters doesn't, when they're tabulating votes for candidates, do they charge for time spent? So in other-
I don't know exactly how it's all calculated.
Okay.
I'm sure it's a little bit of everything that's kind of put into consideration when tabulating the invoice.
Okay,
But as far as the printing, it's very minimal.
okay. So, city pays X number of dollars. Do we ever receive refunds, or is it just you pay whatever the register of voters says, you pay, and then that's it?
They invoice us in December or January, and it's based on cost at that point.
Time spent, basically. Okay. That helps. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Mr. Santos?
Thank you, Mayor. On this, the three items you have in there, on treasurer or the, city clerk, especially on the, for the treasurer in there, I would like to see that, I think that would be advantageous for him to be elected. I mean, if there's no other write-in in there, the reason is it's, you'll get the 4 years in there, and then, I don't know, I mean, that will be more on your side that you've been elected. Again, it's not the ego, but the thing is the process on this. That's the way I see it. And then the transparency, I think the city would like to see that to be on the ballots on that. That's my principle on that. I mean, it happened to us before, and I know some of you maybe doesn't recall on that. I mean, we did appointed, our treasurer, the previous treasurer. If he comes in and write in, he will be one of the candidates again, or getting appointed on this. That's the way I see the, the elections. I like to see the more transparency. I like to maintain our image and everything. On the city clerk, it's really nice that there's not a last minute. I mean, there's somebody coming in to do the write-in in there. And I like to see more of those, that the people, our citizen in here getting involved on our elections in here. That's all, Mayor. I like to do transparency on this. I mean, that would be nice if the council will move on and conduct hold the elections on this. That's all, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So what I'd like to do is to hear from Mr. Patel, and then we can discuss the treasurer position exactly, and then we'll take on the city clerk position after that.
Sounds good.
So,
Mr.
Mr. Patel, you're up.
Go right ahead.
Good evening, everybody. As far as my, I guess, 2 cents go, elected or appointed, my main thing is going back to what Mike had said. If there's going to be a savings cost as far as the city paying, I have no issues being appointed if everyone's on the same page as going to the ballots. I'm okay with that as well. Originally, speaking to Nicole, I had said, I would request to go to the ballot. But if there is going to be savings to the city as far as cost-wise goes, I have no problem being appointed.
Okay. And do we have any public comments on this item?
Do we have any callers on the line?
We don't have any callers on the line.
Okay, great. So any more discussion? I agree with Mr. Santos. I think the fact that Mr. Patel actually went through the process to get on the ballot, and I think being recognized in any future elections as the elected treasurer or as opposed to the appointed treasurer. But I also think that there's a little something different. And Mr. Pinckney, maybe you can speak to this. Is there a difference in the direction going in the future with council in relating to an appointed treasurer versus an elected treasurer?
I don't think so. They serve the same function, whether they're appointed or whether they are elected. They serve in the same role and fulfill the same functions, if I understand your question correctly.
Well, when we had a city council member before that had some legal issues, and our community was clamoring for us to get rid of him. And because he was elected by the people, we didn't have the authority to force him to resign. So does that change whether it's an elected or an appointed position?
It may. Generally, when the council has the power to appoint somebody, they have the power to remove them. I'll just use by way of example, some of the committees that you have where you appoint people to those committees. If you have the appointing power, generally as a principal, you have the power of removal as well. So understanding your question a little bit better, if they are elected, then there's limited ways to remove somebody that's been elected because they're chosen by the voters. And once they're chosen by the voters, the council doesn't really have the power to remove an elected official. What they can do, there are certain factual circumstances that may give rise to seeking permission from the Attorney General's office to file what's called a quo warranto proceeding. So, for example, if somebody becomes incapacitated because of illness and they can't fulfill their duties, or if they are absent without explanation from the city, or if they move out of the city and they have no intent to return and they no longer maintain a physical presence in the city. And there are some other circumstances where a city can file a petition with the Attorney General's office to request permission to file what's called a quo warranto lawsuit. And the Attorney General reviews it and they determine whether it's in the public interest to allow the lawsuit to go forward and whether the statutory requirements are met. And if they do, then they give permission to the city to file the lawsuit, and that permission is a prerequisite to filing that lawsuit. And then the court would determine whether there's cause for removal. So it's a pretty involved process to remove an elected official. The council by itself can't do it, but if they're appointed, generally the principle is that if you have the power to appoint, you have the power to remove.
And one more question. If there had only been 3 applicants or 3 qualified candidates for city council for 2022, would we be considering, would the 3 who were the only 3 in be considered elected, or they wouldn't have to go through an election, right? They'd still be considered elected,
It would be brought forward to you just like this.
but we wouldn't be appointing anybody.
You cannot have a majority of the council appointed.
Right, yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions after, Mr. Lara?
Yeah, first off, Mr. Patel, I appreciate your interest in our city and wanting to act as a public servant. I appreciate that very much. So, Councilmember Santos brought up a good point in regards to transparency. The only comment I have on that is you have one candidate, so it's really, we're not, as far as transparency goes, it's just one candidate, and if it goes to a vote, obviously, to me, it's a shoo-in. However, my primary concern would be is to be able to make sure that the individual has a 4-year term and not a 2-year term, because I wouldn't want anybody to have to go back through the campaign process unnecessarily. So I think, at least in my opinion, I would prefer to appoint, but I think since Mr. Patel has shown his interest, maybe we leave it up to him, see what his preference is. Since we don't know what the cost savings would be to the city, we do know that there would be some. I would say that there could be some on the ballot, we don't know. I think there could be some on as far as work done by the register of voters to count. But there's no really clear answer as far as what we would save. So those are my comments on that, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Martinez.
Yeah, a clarification then for the write-in ballot then. So what would be the qualifications and a procedure for someone to say, oh, I can write in and there's time to conduct a write-in? What would they have to do to be qualified
Are
to write in?
you talking about in the treasurer?
Yeah, for
Okay.
treasurer. Because if it went to ballot, then there's still an option as write-in.
Correct.
And that's what I want to see is what would that entail for the public?
So there is a period for write-in candidates to come forth. They do have to go through a very similar process as the normal candidate process. They do have to get nomination signatures, basically everything except for the candidate statement, because that won't be on a ballot. Their name is not printed on the ballot, so the ballot designation would not apply either. But they would have to be a qualified write-in candidate to be able to have their name written in on the ballot.
So they gather the signatures, verify the signatures, pay still some sort of fee, because it's not.
The
really-
only fee that we charge is for the candidate statement, so
Oh,
at that
so
point, there
it
would not be. There wouldn't be the option.
And then it would be a word of mouth, basically, because there's no way to put it on the ballot in any way.
Correct.
So Mr. Patel runs that risk of having, people wanting to write in. But, okay, thank you.
Mr. Santo.
Let me follow up on the writing on that. But that candidate could still, not only word of mouth, he could put all his candidacy paperwork or materials in there, right? I just like to clarify that for the public on that.
They would not be on the ballot.
Not on
They
the
get
ballots.
sent out.
I
They
do
would not be in
understand.
the voter's guide either.
That's correct. I
Right.
mean, but the signs and everything,
Yes.
we will allow them to campaign on that.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not worried about the cost of, elections and everything. As I said, the transparency is big for me. I mean, I started here 6 years ago and 5 years ago, and I've been transparent for that period till now. And, I like to see the, on Mr. Patel to not have a competition in there. If there's a write-in in there, he got the all the advantages on that side. My point on that is, I think Mr. Pickney, I mean, on the recall, when you're elected, you have to file a recall on that before you could recall the elected official. Is that correct? The process.
Yeah, well, if the voters wanted to remove somebody that's
That's what I'm
elected,
saying.
they would have to go through the recall process. And what I was describing earlier is if somebody no longer qualified to hold an office under the law, there's a process called quo warranto, which is a legal process. But to answer your question, if the voters wanted to recall anybody that's elected, they can do that through the recall process.
That's correct. My next one is if you're appointed, the council could step in or step out in there and do the process of replacing that person. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. I believe, and the principle that I mentioned earlier is generally if the council has the power to appoint somebody, they have the power to remove them.
Yeah.
I have not seen that done
I know.
with an elected position, but that's generally the principle.
No, I really appreciate that, Mr. Pickney, on that. I mean, just to clarify for public who's listening, and then all the candidates in there too. And still, I'm looking on the elections on both on this, and everybody has a chance to be part of us. I mean, this is a good council. I'm telling you, I'm proud of it. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Finn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Ray's comments about transparency, but I think that is accomplished with the filing period and what a potential candidate has to go through. I don't want to put Mr. Patel through having to have just, I'll call it a hassle of having to run for an election when he was the only candidate, qualified candidate going in, or to force him to have to campaign at this point if we feel that there's potential for a write-in candidate. As council had pointed out, there is more options for council. I do expect Mr. Patel to do a good job, and I know it's a labor of love to serve in the city, and we had somebody step up to the plate. So I would be in support of nominating him to the position or whatever.
Appointing.
Thank you. I knew that wasn't right. To appoint him to the position of treasurer.
Okay, seeing no more comments, Mr. Patel, did you want to make the last comment?
No, it's I'm going to leave it up to your your council members, and we'll go from there.
Okay, great. So I entertain a motion at this point.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we appoint Mr. A.J. Patel to the position of treasurer for the city of Beaumont.
I'll second.
And can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Santos?
No.
Sorry, I want to make notes. Councilmember Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Well, yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Okay. We'll move on to the city clerk seat. So at this point, we have at least two of you here. That would you like to have an opportunity to introduce yourself? Sir, sure. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Patel, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I may, Mayor, I just want to clarify my hesitation. My hesitation was I was still thinking about Mr. Santos's comment, and I didn't know whether I thought it was appropriate to let it go to the public and just go through that process to have an elected title. So it was nothing that I had any doubts in your qualifications. I just want to mention that.
No.
So welcome aboard. Congratulations.
Okay, Mr. Sigritz, did I get that right?
Yes, I appreciate that.
Okay,
Yes, it is pronounced Sig Ritz.
okay,
Very good. I appreciate that. Thank you. I am a resident of Four Seasons here in Beaumont. I'm the proud father of 3 adult daughters who are married, giving me 5 grandchildren, and a wife of 47 years that we've been together. I wanted to put a summary together to give you an idea of kind of where I've been in my life. It's kind of like a track record without becoming finite into particular specific businesses, so to speak. So in the professional summary, it's headed up at healthcare industry. Healthcare industry has been a real milestone for me as it's put me one-on-one with the public and with folks who require healthcare. It's been a real motivator for me, and I've enjoyed that. Where did that come from? It came from when I joined the Los Angeles Police Department, which put me out into the public's eye. This was back in the 60s, and of course, in those days, we had so many unrest going on in our country today in that particular time. But it still gave me an eye-opener as to what might be the thing that I might want to look forward to. And so from that point on, I went into the healthcare and proceeded to go from APRI to Lincare to IVR Home Health and move along from being a driver to become into management. And I've enjoyed that all the years until I retired. On the second page, I was part of the Architectural Review Committee for Four Seasons. I put this in here because I thought it was important that you know that I have been in the trenches at one time or another when it came to ordinances. And the one ordinance that really stuck out the most with me was the dark sky. It is something that, from my observation, has been abused within the city and within the communities such as Four Seasons. I've been a big advocate of that. I've held meetings with that. And sometimes things like that fall on deaf ears because they're not really the most important thing that we should be doing. Also, there was a lot of questions about size of gazebos. There was just an array of different kind of things that the board of directors didn't understand, nor did the chair understand. And I had the privilege to come here to the city and go through the ordinances and take a look to see the square footage of a gazebo that could be allowed based on an ordinance. what is the dark sky ordinance and really what does it pertain to? So I thought I'd highlight that. I appreciate the chair who wrote this particular article. I appreciated it very much. On the next page, which is glued to the first one. This one here indicates outdoor lighting. Again, I'm trying to be specific because of the gravity of the ordinance and what needs to be done with it. It needs to be abided by. I've gone to the board of directors more than once, offered my services to hold meetings to new purchasers in the homes to let them know what the guidelines were, what needed to be done. And it's pretty obvious when you've lived in a home for 35 years, you've got liquid cash coming out of it. You come into this particular environment like Four Seasons, you pay cash for that home, you've got it, and it's going to be tough for somebody to tell you what to do and what you can't do. I wanted to approach it from a standpoint of this is how the city looks upon this, and this is how we need to treat these particular ordinances. The next page is really under section 8.50.010, which is purpose and intent, which actually gives the definition of what the dark sky ordinance really retains and what it really means. Well, it really means it's just pollution to the atmosphere is what it is. It's been around for many years. There's approximately 20 to 30 states that I believe are involved in the dark sky ordinance. Beaumont is a beautiful city. It deserves to have the respect, and that respect needs to have this dark sky ordinance initiated and taken care of. We need to pursue that as much as we can. And it's being violated again by not only outside of the community of Four Seasons and Sun Lakes, but other parts of the community also. On the last page, I had to put this one in here because this has to do with the warehousing. It's such an issue that's going to be put, or it's been proposed to banning, I think, and also to here on the other side, on the Sun Lake side, that property over there, I'm sure you're familiar with that. This is going to be a real pain in the rear. This is going to be an ordinance that either we have to fly with it and produce it, we need to stay on top of it for what's going to happen, or we're just going to have to let it fly. It's going to become a thorn in our side. And on top of that, there are certain options that are set down inside of here. There's even a curfew for when lights should be on, it should be off within the size of that facility. So I think that's an important issue. Again, I bring these things to you only to show that I have been in the trenches with the ordinances. I am familiar with what the city of Beaumont requires. I do wish that Four Seasons and any other communities would abide by that. It's important that we do that. Are there any questions?
I think we'll listen to hear from the others, and then if we have questions, we'll bring you back up.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. And who do we have next? Ms. Morgan?
Yes.
You did say the third candidate is on the line?
Third candidate was not able to be here this evening, and so she submitted a short bio.
Is that what we have, that's what we have from her then?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Elaine Morgan. I've been a resident of Beaumont for 8 years now. I'm married. I have 3 children that have given me 10 grandchildren. I am retired. My career was spent in the mortgage banking industry. I've served council as a founding member of the Finance and Audit Committee, as well as the CIP Committee in 2017, and I currently serve on the Board of Administrative Appeals. I do want to just note that my intention is to file my paperwork for this position. I think I was the only one that attended the what was it, the
The
FPPC meeting that Nicole had in June. And unfortunately, my mom took a serious health setback, and I didn't have time to get the paperwork together and signatures. So as far as my career experience, I have three main areas that I believe would be of value to the city clerk position. The majority of my career was in regulatory compliance. So that would include federal, state, city regulations that we needed to abide by. That also included part of the time I was also on my tenure as a Solera board member. So I served two terms as treasurer, one as vice president, and then eventually president of the HOA. And in doing that, you really have to be very cognizant of all regulations in the state of California that governs HOAs. And that included the Davis-Sterling Act, various civil codes, including the Brown Act, and we just needed to be able to ensure that we stayed within compliance of the state and federal housing regulations. Another of my qualities is my attention to detail and organization. You learn very quickly in the mortgage business that if you don't properly package your loan application from your borrowers, or even when I was submitting bonds to the secondary market, every I has to be dotted, every T has to be crossed. So that's been something I've just grown with over the last 40-some years. And then again, my public interaction with the goal of maintaining high levels of customer satisfaction. It is important in the industry to be sure that you establish good relationships with your clients and make sure that they keep coming back to you to do business because you did a great job. So, let's see. I think that was basically all I had. Yep, that's it. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. And so, let me just read the short bio that we received from the third applicant, and her name is Gracie Luna. And she said, "My name is Gracie Luna. I'd like to apply for the position of Beaumont City Clerk. Unfortunately, I am unable to apply in person on Thursday, August 25th at the City Council meeting as I am out of town on that date. I spoke with City Council member Julio Martinez, and he suggested I write a short bio to read at the meeting. The following is that suggestion. As stated above, my name is Gracie Luna. I have been a resident of Beaumont since March of 2009, and I reside in Four Seasons. I retired in December 2008 from a large defense corporation after 25 years where I was involved in sales and marketing, negotiating government contracts, and prepared major celebratory events for the United States Army. I have strong interpersonal and organizational skills, am honest, objective, fair, and possess no individual authority. I appreciate your consideration for this position. Look forward to hearing from you." So before we go into comments or questions, do we have any comments from the public?
Daniel, do we have any callers on the line?
We don't have any callers on the line.
And I
Mr.
have no written comments.
Okay, Mr. Castaldo, did you want to speak for a few minutes?
Thank you.
Sure.
Excuse me. Thank you for the, excuse me. Wasn't prepared to talk. Thank you for the opportunity to address you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I did listen to every one of your comments, and they're great. They're great comments. And transparency has been the hallmark of this council and the council for the last 8 years. The position of treasurer, the position of clerk is supposed to be separate from the council. They're the oversight of the community. I understand your comments about appointing And I was really great for appointing until city attorney says, well, if you can appoint, you can fire. To the outside world, that's kind of scary. You appoint a treasurer, but then the treasurer still has this thing over his head, just as the clerk. So there's a quick answer to it. Talk to Mr. Pinckney, change the municipal code. Once the treasurer is appointed, he can't be removed until end of office. Same with the clerk. This way, everything is satisfied that way. The treasurer can work without having anybody over his head. The clerk can work, and the community is well represented. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castaldo. So first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Sigritz and Mrs. Morgan for coming in. Also want to acknowledge that I could never be on an HOA board, and I can't believe that people actually run for that position, but we'll leave it at that. It's much harder work than a council member, in my opinion. So before we get started, I want to make sure, let's discuss first whether or not going to an all write-in is a consideration. I feel we have qualified candidates who have stepped up, and I feel that if we go to a write-in, we just don't know how interested and dedicated the person who could win what could be a popularity contest, which I know a lot of elections are. But so I'm in favor of appointing someone tonight, and I just wanted to see if we could get that settled before we start talking about who the candidate would be. So does anyone have any comments on that? Is there anyone who's in favor of going to a write-in election? Okay, I see none. Who would like to go first? Nope.
Yeah.
Okay,
May I?
absolutely. Sorry.
Okay, Mr. Sigritz, can you come up and I'll have a couple of questions for you?
Yes, sir.
I have two questions for you and two questions for Ms. Morgan as well. So my first question is, it seems that every clerk that's come in has some sort of a goal or a vision or something on their mind that they want to come in and try to achieve. So my first question is, do you have any goal or vision that as clerk you would want to concentrate on or try to fulfill? And the second, well, let's start with that.
I think it's pretty obvious from what I've presented you in relationship to the dark sky ordinance, which to me is a real important issue. It would be something I would come in and take a look at. And also I would probably take a look at some other issues of ordinances that apply to Four Seasons. I might want to dig into those and take a look too. Anything else that might apply to the rest of the city itself is something I would probably take a little bit cautious with because I'm not sure where to go with that. I can only go with what I have at my fingertips right now, and that's pretty much what I've presented to you. But at least it's given me the opportunity to get entrenched and to be inside that. One-on-one with the public has been great for me my whole life, and to do something like this would just really be an honor.
Thank you. And then the last question I had concerns transparency, imperative part of the city clerk's position. So how could you ensure the public that you as a city clerk would promote transparency?
I would probably make sure that everything is available, that it's an open book for whatever the citizenry wanted to take a look at. I can't see hiding behind an 8-ball and not letting everyone know what's going on. I think the transparency would be to make sure that you're open to the public.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Any other questions for Mr. Sigritz? Okay, so before we, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Before we bring the next, you ready to go again?
Oh, I'm just going to ask her the same question. I think it's fair that they both responded the same way.
Okay, I do want to bring up something we probably should have brought up at the start, just to make sure, because this has been an issue before. city clerks have to file 700s?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with what 700s are?
No, sir, I'm not.
Okay. Someone else could probably describe it better than I can.
Do you want me to?
Yes, please.
A 700 form is a statement of economic interests. So if you had any sort of economic interest within the city, so if you had, and this more so has to deal with, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, this more so has to deal with if you have any sort of action on an item or discussion on an item that's being discussed. If you owned a investment property near the item of discussion, you wouldn't be able to participate in the discussion or motion of that. But as a city clerk, that's not typically been done in the past. But you do have to disclose any sort of financial interest in the city.
I have no problem with that.
Okay, and Ms. Morgan, you're good with that too, right? Okay.
I think I've got 3 or 4 of them on file.
Yeah. Okay, I think Mr. Martinez has some questions for you, Ms.
My
Morgan.
turn?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
you bet,
first
just in the interest of
question?
fairness. My first question was, every city clerk seems to come in with a vision or some sort of a goal that they want to achieve
Oh.
during their tenure. What do you see yourself with any vision or goal particularly?
You know, honestly, I've never thought that the city clerk position was one to be bringing those types of I mean, I could understand bringing an idea within the department, the city clerk's department, but as far as an agenda on something that I would like to have council involved in, I don't really think that that's the clerk's position to do that. But I
Would
think.
you like to clarify any more? What it was intended to do is ask if, for instance, you think that, hey, you know, maybe the ordinances need to be gone through and I'd like to come in and make sure they're all up to date, turn, see if there's any outdated, or come in to make, that's what the question was intended
Oh,
for.
yeah.
So,
Well, I don't have anything specific, but what I would do is make sure that we're in compliance. So if there's changes within the laws that have happened, and I am very up to date on, you know, the civil codes and, you know, what they're doing up in Sacramento and everything. So if I see something that I think could be better written or maybe adapted to a change within the codes or whatever, then certainly I would bring that up.
right. And the second question had to do with transparency. So how could you ensure the public that you, as the city clerk position, would assure that transparency is being followed?
I don't really know. As far as, you know, people coming in and wanting copies of documents or stuff like that, is just making sure that we meet the timelines and give them the full amount of documents that they're entitled to. That would be probably my best way to do that.
Very well. Thank you for your input. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Finn.
Yes, thanks, Ms. Morgan, for being here. So obviously you were intending to file and that something got in the way of that. Had you ever tried to run for public office for any position prior to that?
No, I have not.
Okay. And quick question for you, Mr. Sigritz. Have you ever served in a public office?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay, all right. I'm still mulling over what I'm reading in front of me, and so I'll pause that for now. So thank you.
Okay, and good set of questions by the only person up here who's been a city clerk before, so Mr. Martinez knows what to ask there. Mr. Lara.
Ms. Morgan, I know that you've been involved with the city. In fact, I think we worked together on the Finance and Audit Committee initially. What made you want to apply for city clerk?
For city clerk?
Yes, ma'am.
I like serving and I like being involved with the city, and I felt that the position of city clerk would be a good, strong area to start and maybe potentially move into other positions. So I don't know. I think one of the things that all through my career, I wanted to do stuff. I wanted to go to city council meetings. I wanted to be more involved in my community. But you work like 40, 50, 60 hours a week. It's really hard to be able to become involved. So I kind of made this decision when I retired that now is my opportunity. So I've started with, several committees, and then the Finance and Audit Committee. That was, that was a good entry. And I think now the city clerk position would be another step.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Santos.
Elaine.
Hi.
I know, sorry about this, Mr. Sidwitz. Just like on your side, I know you, back six years ago when we start the Standing Financial Committee.
Yes.
And we got we got 82, standing on the controller, state controller office, and we work on that, and we appointed a committee on that. And then my questions to you, actually for both of you, is how's your time availability?
Availability?
Yes,
Time, you mean in the position?
when I say time, that I know our deputy city clerk, there's a lot of requests for this paper, these documents and everything. And I know way back then, we work hard to produce on this. You have to be in the office. She will work her tail to get those documents and everything, and you review it and everything before you give it to the council on this.
Yeah.
And, probably Nicola worked so hard on this. So for both of you, I'm more on the time availability on this. If you could really, tell us if that's the, I'm semi-retired. I dedicated my time in here for 6 years. I didn't do anything on my business much on this, just to devote my time on the council on this. I'm not telling you that follow me or something, but again, we have a different lifestyle and everything. So again, back to my questions, how's your time availability on this?
Time availability is good now. My whole reason for moving to Beaumont was, 8 years ago now, almost 9, was to take care of my elderly parents. So I've done that over the last 8 years. In my comment about my mother taking a turn for the worse, she passed away on Friday. So many opportunities that I saw previous to this, I wasn't quite sure if I had the availability of time. Who knew, if I'd have to run to the hospital and be there for 4 or 5 days, or sit in, intensive care or something day after day. Now I don't have that. So I believe in being a team member, and working with Nicole and the department is something that would be very important to me. My management style has always been that way also. You work, I try to have an understanding of each of the positions within a particular department, and being able to support them any way I can.
Thank you. Mr. Sigrid, can you answer, give us some ideas, how's your time availability for this position?
Mr. Sigrid, if you could come up here so we can get it on the microphone there.
I'm hungry.
In what sense?
My family is so loving, and they're displaced between Upland, Elko, Nevada, and also in Fontana. My wife has got 2 lovely poodles that she takes care of, and I've got an outstanding electric bike that I ride every day in 4 Seasons. That's my time. I wouldn't apply for this if I didn't feel that I couldn't dedicate enough time and give you everything that I could give you and learn at the same time. So time in itself is not a factor for me.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Any other questions?
I have a question for
Sure, for who?
Cigarettes.
Mr. Sigritz, we have another question for you.
This same question I asked Ms. Morgan, the other candidate, is what drove you to apply for this position?
It's everything else that's on this page.
Okay.
What drove me to do everything that I did on here. I think I have found something in myself that I enjoy doing.
Okay.
I left when I was 17 and never went home again. So I've learned everything on my own. I've been very successful at it. I'm not a wealthy man, but I'm very wealthy when it comes to the knowledge that I have for what I did.
Thank you.
Mr. Finn?
Yes, Mr. Sigurd, sorry, I should have caught you sooner. My bad.
Now you're hungry.
I have a hypothetical question for you. If you're not chosen for this position, would you consider serving in other areas within the city? Perhaps Finance and Audit Committee, perhaps the Planning Commission? Are there other desires that you have and willingness to serve in other capacities?
If I didn't receive this position, I would have my ear to the ground all the time.
Okay. All right, very
Yes.
good. Okay. And then, question for you, Ms. Morgan. If appointed to this position, I would assume that you would give up your position on the board for the administrative appeals, correct?
Right.
Okay.
I don't think I could do both.
Yeah, as far as
think
I
have
understand, I
to.
don't think you can
Yeah.
either, so.
Yeah, because I think that has to be independent of the
Okay.
city. Yeah.
So that's all I have, thank you.
I think
Okay,
that is.
that's it.
That's it.
So we have no more questions. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for Mr. Sigritz to appoint him as city clerk.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Ms. Morgan.
We've got to let the first
Okay.
one go.
Oh, okay.
So I'm waiting for a second on Mr. Sigritz. Okay, so that motion dies with the lack of a second. Mr. Finn?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, I move that we appoint Ms. Elaine Morgan to city clerk.
I'll second.
And can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Santos?
Aye.
Councilmember Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes.
Okay, with that, I think we're all done for business. And we'll go ahead and adjourn this special meeting at 6:03. Thank you both for coming in. And also-
Congratulations, Elaine. Mr. Sigrid, thank you.